In April and early May, you can find the dandelion in places like parks. In this movie, I show you a simple pollination experiment on the dandelion. But let me note one thing, this movie is primarily targeting the residents of Japan in that the study organism is distributed in Japan. Then let's get it started. If you leave the dandelions as they are pollinated by insects, so if you try this experiment, it is better to cover them with something. Now I show you how to cover them. It is easy to use a mesh bag for kitchen sink to collect garbage, like this one. Just put it over the dandelion. However, if you leave this in a park, it looks like a piece of trash and someone may pick it up, so it is safer to put a tag on it to indicate that this is for an experiment. The mouth of the bag is elastic. Now it is fine. Then if you remove the mesh bag, you may not tell which one was the covered one, so you may put a tag on the dandelion as well. For example, you can use plastic tape. Let's cover this dandelion with the mesh bag. If it is windy, the mesh bag may be swept away. You can make a nail of wire like this one. Put a nail to the mesh net, then it won't be swept away. Alternatively, if the stem of the dandelion is long, after covering it with the mesh bag, you can make the mouth of the bag narrower using a stapler. This is how to cover the dandelions. Now let's do the pollination experiment. These two dandelions have been covered since 9 in the morning. Now it is 11 sharp. It is late enough and the flowers are matured. These two flowers are of the same individual. First, I put pollen on this flower on the left. And here is an important note. You should use pollen from another individual. You rub your flower with the flower from another individual. Now it is pollinated. I mark this flower with a circle to indicate that it is pollinated. Then cover it once again. Next one, we do not put pollen on this one. I write an X mark on it. It is fine to leave it as it is, but a skeptical person may suspect that physical stimuli may induce something. So this time I rub the flower with this stick. This flower doesn't receive pollen from another individual. It is done. Then cover it again. Now all 6 flowers are done. Let's wait for a while. It is 2:10 afternoon. Let's see what has happened. First, the right one, without pollination. There is an X mark. It is flowering as it was. On the other hand, this one, it was pollinated. The circle is written. It is completely closed. This time, flowers closed in about 3 hours, but how long it takes depends on the temperature. It also depends on where the dandelions are from. So why don't you try this experiment with the dandelion in your town? Not everything is known, but there are some hypotheses. Flowers of dandelion are hermaphrodites, which means that they function as both male and female. But when a seed is produced, the pollen donor is the father and the pollen recipient is the mother. Seen from the mother, there may be no benefit in keeping the flower open after receiving sufficient amount of pollen. What about the father? Actually, when the flower of the mother closes may be a concern of the father. Suppose that the mother closed her flower after receiving the pollen. This can prevent the later arriving rival pollen from getting on the stigma of the mother. This may allow the father to monopolize the mother. Indeed, a recent study has found that the identity of the pollen affects when the flower closes. You need to use a diploid sexual species for this experiment. If you live in Japan, that means you need to find Japanese native species. Invasive species and hybrids can be distinguished from native species by the flower part that is called phylary. Phylaries of Japanese species stick to the flower, but those of invasive species or hybrids, which are polyploids, are curly. This movie used Tarazacum japonicum. I have not confirmed, but perhaps species like Tarazacum platycarpum and Tarazacum longiapendiculatum will also show similar responses.